the glass ring prepare to be swept away into a world where mystery, loss, and an unbreakable bond intertwine. Today we invite you to listen to The Glass Ring, a compelling tale of twin sisters, Eliza and Clara, tragically separated by a devastating fire and veiled by amnesia. Their decades-long quest to find each other is guided by fragmented memories and an enigmatic shared glass ring. Yet, their reunion unleashes a torrent of long-buried secrets and unforeseen dangers, forcing them to confront a past far more sinister than they could ever imagine. Will they unravel the chilling truth before it consumes them? Before we begin this captivating journey, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and join us as we delve into this gripping narrative of resilience, deception, and the enduring power of family. We hope you enjoy it. The biting November wind, a relentless phantom sculptor, clawed not at threadbare wool this time, but at the meticulously tailored charcoal cashmere of Elara Vance's coat. Each gust, as it snaked through the canyons of lower Manhattan, felt less like a whisper of forgotten names and more like the sharp, insistent prod of a memory she had deliberately, painstakingly buried beneath layers of steel and glass. The city, a relentless, roaring beast of honking taxis and the hurried cadence of a million lives colliding, was not a stark contrast to the hushed, verdant valleys of Havenwood, Pennsylvania, but rather a deliberate, defiant rejection of it. Havenwood now existed not as a faded watercolor in the attic of her mind, but as a carefully locked room, its key long thrown into the swirling currents of the Hudson. Elara's life in New York was a masterclass in calculated detachment. Her apartment, a minimalist sanctuary of steel, concrete, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the relentless pulse of the city, mirrored her own carefully constructed persona. Every object, from the brutalist sculpture on her coffee table to the stark white orchids on her dining table, was chosen for its precise lines and lack of emotional clutter. She was a woman carved from granite, unyielding, yet within her a silent, ceaseless tremor ran. It was a tremor that sometimes, in the dead of night, would manifest as a phantom heat on her skin, or the faint, acrid smell of smoke that no city fumes could fully explain away. Her work as a high-powered corporate lawyer at Sterling & Thorne demanded this precision, this unwavering focus. It was a world of cold logic, airtight contracts, and intellectual duels, a world where emotions were liabilities and the past was irrelevant. Elara excelled, her mind a finely tuned instrument, her reputation as a formidable opponent preceding her in every boardroom. Yet, even as she dissected complex mergers and acquisitions with surgical precision, a small, often ignored part of her felt like a carefully crafted facade, a beautiful but ultimately hollow shell. The only personal adornment she ever allowed herself was a simple yet strikingly intricate glass ring on her right ring finger. It was clear, almost crystalline, with delicate, almost invisible etchings that swirled like trapped smoke. She had no memory of acquiring it, yet it felt as if it had always been a part of her, a cool anchor in a storm of forgotten emotions. The first crack in her obsidian mirror of self-imposed oblivion came on a Tuesday, an unremarkable day that would, in retrospect, become the fulcrum of her existence. Her phone, an extension of her professional self, vibrated with an unknown number. Usually she ignored such intrusions, but something compelled her to answer. "Ms. Vance?" "Detective Miller." "New York City homicide." The word struck her like a physical blow, a dissonant chord in the carefully composed symphony of her life. Homicide? Her world was about civil law, not the brutal realities of crime. A shiver, colder than any November wind, snaked down her spine. "This isn't about any of my clients, is it, Detective?" Elara's voice, usually a blade of polished steel, held a barely perceptible tremor. "No, Ms. Vance, this is about you. Or rather, something that might connect to you. We've got a new lead in an old case, a cold case actually, from Havenwood, Pennsylvania. The Glass Ring Murders." The name. Havenwood. The Glass Ring. The two concepts collided in Elara's mind, a violent thunderclap shattering the meticulous calm she had cultivated for decades. Her meticulously ordered office, the vibrant cityscape outside, all blurred into an indistinct canvas as a wave of nausea washed over her. Havenwood. The name was a whisper of dread, a forgotten nightmare, trying to claw its way back into consciousness. The glass ring murders? She repeated, the words tasting like ash. Yes. It's a series of unsolved homicides from 25 years ago. A family, and we've just found something new. A witness, and a very specific piece of evidence. A glass ring, Ms. Vance, identical to the one you're wearing according to our intel. A phantom heat flared on Ilara's skin, followed by a sudden icy chill that permeated her very bones. Her hand instinctively clutched the ring, its smooth surface. Suddenly feeling charged with an unseen energy, the cold logic that governed her life began to crumble, replaced by a torrent of disjointed, terrifying images, a blinding flash of orange light, the guttural roar of flames like a living, hungry beast, the acrid smell of smoke filling her lungs, burning, suffocating. A small, terrified hand slipping from her grasp, a figure, tall and dark, silhouetted against a backdrop of inferno, his face obscured by the dancing shadows, yet radiating a chilling, malevolent intent. And a piercing scream, a child's scream, that felt as if it originated from her own throat, from a time long, long ago. These fragments, once carefully tucked, away in the forgotten corners of her mind, now cascaded forth, each one a sharp shard of glass cutting deeper with every memory. She gasped, a ragged, involuntary sound that betrayed her practiced composure. "Ms. Vance, are you all right?" Detective Miller's voice, though distant, held a note of concern. Ilara forced herself to take a deep, shaky breath, fighting for control. I'm fine, Detective. Just surprised. What makes you think—" "We have a witness, Ms. Vance. Someone who saw you as a child during the initial investigation, and she mentioned the ring. Said you never took it off. Said there were 2 of you, 2 girls, twins. The word hung in the air, a bell tolling a forgotten truth. Ilara had always been alone, an only child, she'd been told, an orphan, but the word, uttered by a stranger, resonated with a profound, almost painful familiarity. A hollow ache in her chest, a phantom limb of a sister she'd never known, suddenly throbbed with an unbearable intensity. "Twins?" Ilara whispered, the question barely audible. Her polished exterior was cracking, revealing a raw, vulnerable core. "Yes, a girl named Clara. Your sister. She disappeared that night. Never found. The police at the time ruled it an accident, a tragic fire. But there were always whispers. And now, with this new witness, and the discovery of another victim connected to the case, also found with a similar glass ring, we're reopening it. We believe there might be more to this story than a simple accident. Another victim. Another glass ring." The chilling echoes multiplied. It wasn't just about her forgotten past. It was about a present danger, a web of interconnected tragedies stretching across decades. The meticulous order of Ilara's life, built on the foundations of deliberate amnesia, was now crumbling, exposing the raw, charred landscape beneath. I don't remember any of this," Ilara lied, the words tasting bitter. She remembered, or rather, fragments were fighting to surface, like bodies from a murky depth. The smell of burning wood, the heat, the fear, and a face, not her own, but eerily similar, screaming. "That's understandable, Ms. Vance. Trauma does strange things to memory. But we believe you hold a key, perhaps unknowingly, to what happened that night, and to the fate of your sister." The mention of her sister, Clara, was a new kind of pain, sharp and precise, carving a path through the emotional numbness Ilara had lived with for so long. She had no memories of Clara, yet the name felt intrinsically linked to her own fragmented identity. It was as if a crucial piece of her soul had been ripped away, leaving an aching void that no professional success or urban anonymity could ever fill. I'll need some time to process this, detective, Alara said, her voice strained. Her gaze fell upon the glass ring on her finger. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry anymore. It was a silent, sparkling whisper of a forgotten life, a potential link to a horror she had desperately tried to bury. The delicate etchings, once merely decorative, now seemed to swirl with unspoken secrets, like trapped smoke forever striving to escape. Of course, Ms. Vance, but time is of the essence. We have reason to believe the person responsible might still be out there, and he has a history with these rings. He seems to collect them. Detective Miller's words were a cold, final click, locking the door on Alara's carefully constructed isolation. I'll send you the details for a meeting. We need to talk. Alara hung up, the silence in her spacious office suddenly deafening, punctuated only by the frantic hammering of her own heart. The city outside, once a symbol of her independence, now felt like a vast, uncaring entity, unable to offer solace or escape. The meticulously tailored charcoal cashmere, once a shield, now felt like a thin veil against a storm of forgotten terrors. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, her reflection staring back at her from the obsidian glass. A stranger with haunted eyes. The woman in the glass looked strong, unyielding, but the woman inside was a fragile tapestry, slowly unraveling, thread by painful thread. The glass ring on her finger pulsed with a cold, insistent energy, a silent siren call to a past she could no longer outrun. Havenwood was no longer a locked room. It was a gaping wound, and Alara Vance, the formidable lawyer, was about to be pulled back into its depths, not as a witness, but as a survivor, haunted by the ghost of a sister and the chilling truth of a night she had spent a lifetime trying to forget. The hunt for answers had begun, and Alara, despite her terror, knew she had no choice but to follow the whispering echoes of the glass ring wherever they led. While Alara Vance wrestled with the phantom flames and the spectral touch of a sister, she'd never known in the clamor of New York, 1,000 miles north, in the quiet artistic pulse of a New England town, Lily Thorne lived a life painted in muted earth tones and the scent of freshly cut wood. Her studio, nestled amongst a cluster of ancient oak trees, was a sanctuary of sawdust and creation. Here, with hands calloused but nimble, she coaxed life from forgotten timber, transforming gnarled burls into delicate sculptures, discarded planks into functional artistry. Each piece was a testament to patience, to seeing beauty in imperfection, to believing in the possibility of transformation, virtues she consciously sought to embody in her own life. Lily, unlike Alara, had never consciously suppressed her past. Instead, her childhood had been a blurred landscape, a canvas washed clean by an unknown force. She remembered being adopted, loved by her new parents, but the earliest years remained an impenetrable fog, pierced only by recurrent vivid nightmares. These dreams were always the same, a raging inferno, the suffocating grip of smoke, and a desperate, childish wail. When she woke, the acrid smell of burnt wood often lingered in her nostrils, a cruel phantom, her only tangible link to that lost. Time was a glass ring, identical in every intricate swirl and subtle imperfection to Alara's. It was her most cherished possession, a cool comfort against her skin, worn constantly. It felt like a tether to something vital, something she couldn't name but desperately missed. Sometimes she would trace the delicate patterns on its surface, as if hoping to unlock the secrets held within its crystalline depths. It was more than an adornment. It was a silent prayer, a question etched into the glass. The tranquility of Lily's carefully curated existence began to fray at the edges. One crisp autumn afternoon, a rare, unannounced delivery arrived. A heavy, unassuming wooden box, expertly crafted, yet emanating an unsettling aura. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark velvet, was a single, faded photograph. It depicted two little girls, no older than 5, standing hand in hand in a sun-dappled garden. Their smiles were wide, innocent, utterly disarming, and on the ring finger of each child, gleaming even in the grainy black and white, was an unmistakable, intricate glass ring. Identical lilies, Breath hitched in her throat. The air in her studio, usually rich with the scent of pine and cedar, suddenly felt thin, charged with an invisible current. Her hand instinctively flew to her own ring, her fingers tracing its familiar contours, as if seeking confirmation. The girl on the right in the photograph, with eyes that mirrored her own, felt like looking into a distorted mirror of her soul. A jolt, a profound and undeniable recognition, surged through her. It was as if a long-dormant nerve had suddenly fired, sending ripples of shock and longing through her entire being. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was a sign, a whisper from the universe, urging her forward. The accompanying note was brief, written in elegant, looping script on aged parchment. The threads of fate, though often tangled, always lead home. Look for the answers in the obsidian mirror, where the past reflects the present. Havenwood. Havenwood. The name struck Lily with the force of a sudden memory, not a visual one, but a deep, visceral recognition. It was a word that resonated with the forgotten aches in her bones, a place that haunted her nightmares without ever fully revealing itself. The phrase obsidian mirror echoed Ilara's current struggle, an unwitting synchronicity across the miles. Lily's artistic intuition, usually her compass, spun wildly. This was no ordinary commission. This was a plea, a challenge, an invitation to a truth she had unknowingly craved her entire life. Driven by an insistent, almost primal urge, Lily began to dig. Her initial searches were hesitant, tentative steps into a past she barely knew. She discovered old newspaper articles, yellowed with age, detailing a tragic house fire in Havenwood, Pennsylvania, decades ago. A family perished, it read, a set of twins tragically lost. But the details were sparse, contradictory. Some accounts mentioned only one child, others two. The glass ring murders were hinted at in obscure online forums, dismissed by most as urban legend, but to Lily they felt chillingly real. The pieces, like scattered sawdust, were slowly beginning to coalesce. She found a local historian, an eccentric woman named Mrs. Albright, whose small, cluttered cottage was a labyrinth of forgotten histories and local lore. Mrs. Albright, with eyes as keen as a hawk's, recognized the glass ring immediately. "Ah, the twins' rings," Mrs. Albright said, her voice raspy, like dry leaves scuttling across a path. "Local legend says they were tokens of unbreakable bonds, often given to twin sisters, a charm to ensure they always found their way back to each other, even across the widest oceans of time and memory." Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. "Twins? My sister? She had one too?" Mrs. Albright nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on Lily's ring. "There was a terrible fire, dear. Many years ago. The Vance family. A little girl, Eliza, was found, but her twin Clara was never recovered. Such a tragedy. And they both had those rings. Always worn them. The name, Eliza. It felt right, a missing chord in the symphony of her lost identity. And Clara. Her own name. It was like hearing echoes of a song she'd always known but forgotten the lyrics to. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. She was Clara, and somewhere out there, her sister Eliza, now Ilara Vance, was carrying the other half of this broken truth. As Mrs. Albright spoke, Lily's fragmented memories began to coalesce with startling clarity. Not just the fire, but before. A sun-dappled garden, vibrant with hollyhocks and the buzz of bees. The soft earth beneath her bare feet, the cool, damp air of a hidden root cellar, a place of secret games and whispered confidences, and a well, an old stone wishing well where they would toss pennies and make silent, childish vows. The image of the photograph solidified into a vivid memory. The garden, the well, it was real, her home. But the most disturbing memories were those of a man. Not a father's comforting presence, but a shadow that loomed large, a palpable sense of unease. His voice, when it surfaced, was a low rumble, laced with an unsettling anger. She saw glimpses of him, distorted by the flames, his face twisted in a way that chilled her to the bone. And then, the terror of a car engulfed in fire, the frantic pulling of a small unknown hand trying to save her, and the devastating silence that followed. The fire. It wasn't an accident, was it? Lily whispered, her voice barely a breath, filled with a nascent dread. Mrs. Albright's silence was answer enough. The old woman's eyes, usually twinkling with stories, now held a deep, profound sadness. Armed with this newfound, terrifying knowledge, Lily knew she had to go to Havenwood. The little New England town, once a safe haven for her artistic endeavors, suddenly felt too small, too confining. Her studio, her sanctuary, now seemed to hum with the unspoken questions of her past. Havenwood beckoned, a magnetic pull that was both terrifying and irresistible. She packed a small bag, the glass ring a cool weight on her finger, a constant reminder of the urgent, vital truth she was seeking. The drive to Havenwood was a pilgrimage into her own forgotten self. The landscapes shifted from the gentle, rolling hills of New England to the more rugged, densely wooded terrain of Pennsylvania. Each mile felt like a step deeper into a dream, a slow unfolding of a long-lost narrative. As she approached the town limits, a heavy mist descended, clinging to the ancient trees like skeletal fingers, mirroring the shroud of mystery that still clung to her memory. The air grew heavier, colder, carrying a faint, inexplicable scent of ash. The sign for Havenwood, weathered and faded, seemed to loom out of the mist, a ghost from her earliest nightmares. Her breath hitched. The air felt thick, charged with unspoken sorrow. She recognized fragments of the town, not visually, but through a strange emotional resonance. The imposing old clock tower, the cobblestone streets, the quiet, almost mournful silence that seemed to permeate everything. And then, as she drove past a dilapidated old farmhouse on the outskirts, a memory slammed into her with brutal force. The rusted remains of a burned-out car, half hidden by overgrown weeds, exactly as she had seen it in her most vivid nightmares. It wasn't just a dream. It was real. It had happened. The fear she'd felt in those dreams, the cold dread, was tangible. The man in the shadows, his face obscured, suddenly loomed larger in her mind's eye, no longer a figment of imagination, but a very real, very dangerous presence. This wasn't just about finding a sister. It was about confronting the architect of their shared trauma. The threads of fate, once so delicate, had now twisted into a taut, dangerous rope, pulling her deeper into the heart of a darkness she was only just beginning to comprehend. Lily knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that her journey to Havenwood would lead her not just to answers, but to a confrontation with the very person who had fractured her world, and perhaps her very soul. The fragile piece she had meticulously built was about to be shattered, just like the glass of a forgotten window. The ancient skeletal trees of Havenwood seemed to hold their breath as Alara Vance's sleek black car, a stark metropolitan intruder, pulled up to the overgrown rusted gate of what remained of the Vance property. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, held a peculiar stillness, as if the very ground whispered secrets. Alara, usually a fortress of composure, felt a tremor run through her, a tremor that had nothing to do with the lingering chill of the November air and everything to do with the phantom heat of old flames. Her elegant heels sank slightly into the soft, muddy ground, a subtle metaphor for the carefully constructed facade of her life giving way. Just moments later, a dusty, well-worn SUV, its paintwork scarred with the stories of countless journeys, pulled up behind her. From its driver's seat emerged a woman with calloused hands and eyes that held a familiar, haunting depth. It was Lily Thorne. The two stood a few feet apart, caught in the twilight haze, like two distant stars finally, drawn into the same orbit. Alara, accustomed to dissecting human behavior in courtrooms, found herself disarmed by the raw vulnerability in Lily's gaze, a mirror image of her own unspoken fears. Lily stepped forward, her hand instinctively reaching for the glass ring on her finger, a gesture Alara found herself mirroring. The cool, smooth surfaces of the rings, identical in every intricate swirl, shimmered faintly in the fading light. It was a silent, undeniable testament. A bridge across the chasm of forgotten years. "Eliza?" Lily's voice, soft as a brushstroke, on canvas, felt like a caress to Alara's soul, a name that resonated with a buried tenderness she hadn't known she possessed. Alara's breath hitched. "Clara?" Her own voice was a fractured whisper, a revelation more profound than any legal brief. The formality of Elara Vance, the formidable lawyer, dissolved into the raw, aching reality of a lost child, finally reclaiming her other half. The names, once abstract echoes, now anchored them to a shared history, to a bond severed by unimaginable trauma. There was no need for elaborate explanations, no room for the practiced detachment Elara had mastered. The twin glass rings, pulsating with an almost ethereal glow in the dimming light, spoke volumes. They were each other's proof, their mirror, their missing piece. Tears, hot and unbidden, streamed down Alara's face. Tears she hadn't shed in decades, tears for a lost childhood, for a sister she hadn't known she mourned. Lily reached out, her calloused hand surprisingly gentle as she touched Alara's cheek, wiping away a tear. The touch was electric, a current of recognition that ran deeper than skin. "The dreams," Lily began, her voice thick with emotion. "The fire, the smoke." "You too?" Elara nodded, her throat tight with a pain that was both ancient and blindingly new. "Always. They were always there, just locked away. Until now." She gestured vaguely towards the charred remains of what might have once been their home, a skeletal silhouette against the bruised sky. "This place, it's real. All of it." A shared purpose, unspoken but palpable, knit them together. They moved as one, drawn by an irresistible force towards the remnants of the old house. The air grew heavy, thick with the weight of unseen memories. The ground beneath their feet felt uneven, as if scarred by the very violence it had witnessed. Twisted metal beams, blackened timbers, and piles of rubble lay scattered like the bones of a forgotten beast. Every step was a descent into the nightmare they had both lived, yet only now truly remembered. "There was a garden," Lily murmured, her eyes scanning the desolate landscape. "A wishing well. I remember throwing pennies." Her voice was a fragile thread, weaving through the oppressive silence. Alara's gaze followed Lily's, a faint image forming in her mind. Sunlight filtering through apple blossoms, the scent of fresh earth. "And a root cellar," she added, the words tasting like dust. "A secret place. We used to hide there." The mention of the root cellar sparked a flicker of hope amidst the desolation. They began to search, their movements driven by an intuitive understanding, a silent dance of shared purpose. They cleared away debris, their gloved hands uncovering shards of shattered pottery, rusted toys, and fragments of a life violently extinguished. The silence was punctuated only by the scrape of their boots, the rustle of dry leaves, and the ragged rhythm of their breathing. It was Lily who found it, hidden beneath a collapsed section of a wall, barely visible amidst the rubble. A small, sturdy wooden box, miraculously preserved. Its surface was worn smooth, but intricate carvings of flowers and vines still adorned its lid. It was small enough to hold in one hand, yet its presence felt immense, a vault guarding untold secrets. With trembling fingers they opened the box. Inside, nestled among faded silk, was a leather-bound journal. Its pages were brittle, yellowed with age, its cover embossed with a faded gold initial, M. Their mother. Elara took the journal, her fingers tracing the familiar contours of the leather. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over her. Grief for a mother she barely remembered, a fierce curiosity about the life she had lost, and a primal dread of what the journal might reveal. "This must be hers," Elara whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Our mother's." As Elara began to read, the words on the brittle pages became more than ink on paper. They were a voice from the grave, a chilling testament to the horrors of that night. Their mother's elegant, flowing script detailed a life under siege, a marriage consumed by their father's escalating violence and unpredictable rages. He wasn't just a man. He was a storm, unpredictable and destructive. He had an obsession with the glass rings, not as symbols of connection, but as tokens of his twisted sense of ownership, his belief that they somehow bound his daughters to him, inextricably, even violently. The entries grew increasingly desperate, chronicling her fear for her daughter's safety, her desperate attempts to shield them from their father's escalating brutality. The night of the fire, she wrote, was not an accident. It was a calculated, heinous act of vengeance. Their father, consumed by a jealous rage, had set the house ablaze, intending to destroy everything, including them. October 26, 19XX. My heart is a drum of terror. He found the hiding place. He knows about the rings. He says they are a mockery, a bond he cannot sever. He said if he can't have them, no one can. I saw the madness in his eyes tonight. He spoke of purifying fire. My babies. My beautiful girls. I must protect them. Lily gasped, a hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror as she read over Alara's shoulder. The pieces of their nightmares, once fragmented and nonsensical, now snapped into a terrifyingly coherent whole. The burning house, the acrid smoke, the man in the shadows. It was their father, their own flesh and blood, trying to burn them alive. The image of the car engulfed in flames, the desperate, unidentifiable hand trying to pull her from the wreckage. It was their grandfather, their mother's father, who had rushed into the inferno. And then, a passage that ripped through their hearts like a jagged knife. The fire rages. He is a demon. Grandfather came. Oh, my brave father. He grabbed Eliza, pushing her towards the window, shouting for her to run. I held Clara, my little Clara, so tightly. He told us to meet him at the well. He would save us. He told me to run, to save Clara, that he would follow with Eliza. But he didn't. He never came. He stayed behind, to fight the beast, to buy us time. He sacrificed himself. My father, our hero. A guttural cry escaped Alara's lips, raw and pain-filled. Their grandfather, the quiet, gentle man from their mother's faded photographs, had died a hero, sacrificing himself to save them from their own father's monstrous rage. The chilling realization settled upon them like a shroud. Their father was not merely disturbed, he was a murderer. Not just of their grandfather, but an attempted murderer of his own twin daughters. The weight of this truth, heavier than any stone, pressed down on them. They huddled together, two broken halves of a shattered whole, sharing the same grief, the same shock, the same profound sense of betrayal. The glass rings on their fingers, once a symbol of their unknown connection, now felt like a brand, a mark of their shared survival from a horror that defied comprehension. He tried to kill us, Lily whispered, her voice hoarse with a mixture of terror and dawning rage. Our own father. Alara's jaw tightened, her hands clenching the journal, its brittle pages trembling. The sophisticated lawyer, the woman who had built walls of logic around her emotions, was gone. In her place was a survivor, burning with a cold, righteous fury. The abstract dread of forgotten nightmares had crystallized into a concrete, terrifying reality. Their father was not just a shadowy figure from a distant past. He was a tangible threat, a man who had orchestrated their destruction. And if he was still alive, if he was truly collecting these rings as Detective Miller suggested, then their reunion wasn't just a discovery. It was a grave danger. The very act of finding each other had pulled them back into the orbit of his madness. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the ravaged landscape. The ruins of the house, once a source of only vague unease, now radiated a palpable malevolence. Ilara looked at Lily, her sister, her mirror. Their eyes, though different in color, held the same fierce determination. The raw grief began to morph into something harder, colder, a resolve to uncover the full extent of the truth and to confront the monster who had stolen their childhood, their family, and nearly their lives. The glass rings, once symbols of a mysterious fate, now glowed with the fiery promise of vengeance and the unwavering strength of sisterhood. The revelations within the journal had not only connected them to their past, they had propelled them into a dangerous present, a confrontation that was now inevitable. The night clung to Havenwood like a suffocating shroud, amplifying the mournful whisper of the wind through the skeletal trees. Inside what remained of the Vance farmhouse, the air was thick with the scent of decay and the palpable tension of unspoken dread. Ilara and Lily stood amidst the rubble, their faces illuminated by the wavering beam of a single flashlight. The journal of their mother clutched tight in Ilara's hand. The revelations within its brittle pages had not merely been words. They were a thunderclap, shattering the remaining fragments of their false peace. The fear that had always simmered beneath the surface of their lives now coalesced into a cold, hard resolve. Their father, the architect of their childhood trauma, was not a ghost, but a living, breathing monster. "He tried to kill us," Lily repeated, her voice a raw whisper, still laced with disbelief. Her artistic hands, usually so adept at shaping wood, now trembled with a contained fury. "Our own father and grandfather. He saved us." Ilara's jaw was set, a line of steel. The sophisticated lawyer's analytical mind, usually her fortress, was now a weapon, honed by pain. "He won't escape justice this time," she stated, her voice low but unwavering. "Detective Miller said he has a history with these rings. He collects them. He probably knows we're here. He wants to finish what he started." A chilling thought struck her, like a shard of ice. He wasn't just lurking, he was waiting. This wasn't merely a confrontation, it was a trap, a twisted reunion orchestrated by a madman. A sudden gust of wind howled through the broken window panes, rattling the remaining timbers. The house groaned, a living thing in its death throes, mimicking the agonizing memories clawing at their minds. Ilara looked at Lily, her twin. Their eyes, though different in color, held the same fierce glint of determination. The raw grief had solidified into something sharper, a desperate need for answers, for justice, and for an end to the terror that had shadowed their lives. "What do we do?" Lily asked, her voice steadying. The fragility that had touched her earlier had been replaced by a nascent strength, a resilience forged in the fires of shared trauma. "We face him," Ilara replied, her grip tightening on the journal. "We bring him into the light. We make him pay." The glass ring on her finger felt cold, then suddenly warm, as if infused with the simmering anger of a forgotten past. Just then, a faint creak echoed from the shadows of the crumbling staircase, a sound that sliced through the oppressive silence like a rusty blade. Both sisters froze, their hearts hammering against their ribs. The flashlight beam, held steady by Ilara, cut through the gloom, illuminating a figure standing silhouetted against the broken wall. He was older now, his frame gaunt, his hair a shock of white, but the menacing glint in his eyes was instantly recognizable to both of them, a chilling echo of their nightmares. His face, etched with a lifetime of resentment and madness, contorted into a grotesque smile. The man their mother had described, the demon who had set their world ablaze, stood before them. Their father. "Well, well," his voice rasped, a dry, rusty sound. "Look what the cat dragged in, my little birds, finally returning to the nest." There was a cruel amusement in his tone, a predator toying with his prey. "And you brought the rings. How thoughtful." His gaze fixed on their hands, lingering on the glass rings, a chilling hunger in his eyes. Ilara stepped forward, shielding Lily slightly. "It's over, Father. We know everything." Her voice, surprisingly steady, resonated with the authority of her profession, yet vibrated with a deeper personal conviction. "The journal. Mother told us everything." His smile vanished, replaced by a sneer. "That traitorous witch. always trying to undermine me, filling your heads with lies." His eyes darted around the ruined house, as if searching for an escape or a weapon. "She twisted things. She was weak. I was merely purging the impurity, making you stronger." His voice rose, tinged with a terrifying self-righteousness. "Purging," Lily cried out, her voice cracking with fury. "You tried to murder us. You killed—" "Grandfather." The mention of their grandfather seemed to strike a nerve. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of something akin to pain, quickly replaced by a deeper, more chilling madness. "He interfered. He always interfered. They were my daughters, my property, and those rings. They tied you to her." He lunged suddenly, a desperate animalistic lunge, towards Alara, his hand reaching for the journal. Alara, with surprising agility, honed by years of quick thinking in high-stakes situations, sidestepped him. Lily, with the reflexes of a skilled craftswoman, grabbed a fallen piece of timber, hefting it like a makeshift weapon. The dance of survival, once played out in terrifying dreams, was now unfolding in the charred reality of their childhood home. "You can't hide from this anymore," Alara shouted, her voice echoing through the ruins. "The police know. Detective Miller is waiting." She gambled, hoping the mention of law enforcement would sow a seed of doubt, a crack in his delusion. A flicker of fear crossed his face, fleeting but visible. He paused, his eyes darting towards the broken entrance. But the madness quickly regained its grip. "Lies, all lies! No one cares about this old house. No one cares about an old man." He let out a chilling, guttural roar and lunged again, this time towards Lily, who stood closer to the makeshift exit. Lily, though terrified, stood her ground. She swung the timber, not with the intent to harm, but to create a barrier, a warning. He stumbled, surprised by her defiance, and fell awkwardly over a pile of debris. Alara seized the moment. "Tell us, father. Why the rings? What was their true meaning to you?" She knew that forcing him to confront his obsession might expose a weakness, a chink in his armor of delusion. He slowly pushed himself up, his eyes now gleaming with a cold, unsettling intensity. "The rings," he rasped, his voice suddenly calm, chillingly so. "They were meant to be a symbol of my absolute dominion, a bond that could never be broken. But your mother, she poisoned them with her sentimentality. She said they symbolized sisterhood, love. Lies. They were always meant for me." He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet pouch. He untied the drawstring, and from it he produced 2 more glass rings, identical to theirs. His collection. A gasp escaped Lily's lips. Not just theirs. He had others. How many? How many families had he destroyed, all for this twisted obsession? The horror of it was suffocating. "I tried to make new ones," he continued, his voice taking on a distant, almost wistful tone. "But they were never right, never truly connected. They needed the bond, the raw, unbroken bond of twins. That's why I needed you back, to complete the set, to truly bind you to me." His eyes, fixed on their rings, were disturbingly possessive, like a mad collector admiring his prized possessions. A sudden, sharp beam of light pierced the darkness from the entrance, followed by the familiar authoritative voice of Detective Miller. "Police! Don't move!" The father's head snapped towards the entrance, his eyes widening in a mixture of surprise and panic. The spell of his manic confession was broken. He let out a frustrated growl like a cornered animal. Alara and Lily, seizing the opportunity, rushed towards the detective, creating distance between themselves and their deranged father. He tried to scramble away, his movements clumsy, desperate. Detective Miller and his team quickly moved in, their flashlights illuminating the scene, cutting through the shadows that had harbored so much darkness. The father, trapped and cornered, let out a final chilling scream of rage and despair as he was apprehended. The sound reverberated through the ruins, a ghostly echo of the inferno he had created so long ago. As he was led away, his eyes, wild and defeated, met Alara's. For a fleeting moment she saw not the monster, but a broken, pathetic man, consumed by his own twisted obsessions. But the pity was fleeting, overshadowed by the immense relief that flooded her. It was over. The long nightmare, the silent terror, the hidden past. It was finally over. Ilara and Lily stood side by side, their hands clasped, the cool smoothness of their glass rings a silent testament to their unbreakable bond. The ruins of their childhood home, once a tomb of forgotten horrors, now felt strangely liberated, as if the darkness had finally been driven out. The air, though still carrying the scent of decay, also held a subtle hint of newfound freedom, of fresh beginnings. The journey of unraveling the truth had been agonizing, but it had led them to each other and to the light. The shattered mirror of their past had finally yielded to the unbroken reflection of their present, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of love and truth. The path ahead would be long, filled with the arduous task of healing, but they would face it together, sisters, survivors, united by blood and the unwavering strength of their shared history. The last echo of the siren faded into the Havenwood night, leaving behind a silence heavier than any before. Ilara Vance and Lily Thorne stood amidst the skeletal remains of their childhood home, illuminated by the flashing blue and red lights of police cruisers that painted the ruins in stark, surreal strokes. Their father, now a gaunt, broken figure, had been led away, his madness finally contained, leaving behind only the lingering scent of ash and the ghosts of forgotten terrors. The immediate aftermath was a blur of police reports, hushed questions, and the detached professionalism of Detective Miller, whose steady gaze offered a quiet reassurance amidst the chaos. For Ilara, the legal mind reasserted itself, meticulously detailing the contents of her mother's journal, providing the irrefutable evidence of their father's heinous crimes. For Lily, the artist's eye saw not just destruction, but the potential for rebuilding, for reclaiming. But beneath these outward roles, both sisters were navigating a landscape of raw emotion, a churning sea of grief for what was lost, and a fragile, nascent hope for what could finally begin. The days that followed were a testament to the fragile strength of their newfound bond. They stayed in a quaint bed and breakfast in Havenwood, a stark contrast to the ruins they had left behind. The first morning, Ilara, the meticulous urbanite, found herself making Lily, the earthy craftswoman, a perfectly brewed cup of coffee. Lily, in turn, found herself sketching the contours of Ilara's face, capturing the hidden vulnerability beneath the lawyer's sharp angles. They spoke for hours, piecing together the fragmented memories, each sister's recollection illuminating the dark corners of the other's mind. Lily remembered the warmth of their grandfather's hands, his booming laughter, aspects of his character that Ilara's more fractured memories could not fully grasp. Ilara recounted the sterile quiet of the orphanage, the numbing routine that had been her shield, helping Lily understand the silence that often accompanied her sister's intense focus. The shared journey of remembrance was agonizing, a surgical excavation of old wounds, but each unearthed memory, though painful, was a step towards healing. They visited their grandfather's unmarked grave in the local cemetery, a small forgotten plot beneath a sprawling oak. The weight of his sacrifice, once an abstract concept, now settled upon them with profound gratitude. Lily carved a small, intricate wooden bird, a symbol of freedom and remembrance, and placed it on the fresh earth, a quiet tribute. Ilara, the woman who rarely showed emotion, found herself weeping, her tears mingling with Lily's as they held each other, two halves of a fractured whole finally beginning to mend. The legal proceedings that followed were arduous, a grim dance through the labyrinth of justice. Their father, now a shadow of his former menacing self, was deemed mentally unfit to stand trial for the glass ring murders. He was committed to a high-security psychiatric facility, his life now confined by walls far more tangible than the psychological ones he had built for himself. There was no triumphant shout of "guilty," no dramatic pronouncement of justice served in a courtroom. Instead, there was a quiet, almost melancholic sense of closure. He was no longer a threat. The monster had been caged. This quiet resolution, devoid of the theatrical courtroom drama Alara was accustomed to, forced a profound shift within her. She realized that true justice wasn't always a gavel striking wood, but the reclamation of peace, the arduous journey back to oneself. She began to reevaluate her life in New York, the steel and glass fortress she had built. The relentless pursuit of corporate success suddenly felt hollow, a frantic attempt to fill a void that only genuine human connection could truly satisfy. Lily, on the other hand, found her artistic voice amplified by the truth. Her sculptures, once imbued with a subtle melancholy, now vibrated with a newfound vibrancy, a celebration of resilience. The intricate glass rings, once symbols of an unknown dread, transformed in her mind into beacons of hope, testaments to an unbreakable bond. She started incorporating glass elements into her woodworking, the delicate transparency of the glass contrasting beautifully with the solid earthiness of the wood, a metaphor for the fragile strength they had found within themselves. Weeks turned into months. Alara, to the astonishment of her colleagues, took an extended sabbatical from her high-powered firm. She spent it in Havenwood, not in the ruins, but in Lily's studio, learning the tactile joy of shaping wood, finding solace in the sawdust, and the patient rhythm of creation. Lily, in turn, visited Alara in New York, navigating the concrete jungle with a cautious wonder, seeing the city not as a monstrous anonymity, but as a place where her sister had built a life, however isolated. They explored each other's worlds, bridging the vast chasm that had once separated them. Their relationship deepened, evolving beyond the initial shock of reunion into a complex tapestry of shared trauma, unwavering support, and rediscovered affection. They were not just sisters by blood but by fire, by shared survival. They laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in decades. They grieved, allowing themselves the release of collective sorrow. They planned for the future, not as two separate individuals, but as two halves of a whole, intrinsically linked. One crisp spring afternoon, as the first buds swelled on the trees in Havenwood, Alara and Lily stood before the remnants of their childhood home. The police tape was gone. The rubble had been cleared, leaving only a cleared patch of earth where a house once stood. It was a blank canvas. They decided not to rebuild. Instead, they envisioned a memorial, a quiet garden of remembrance where two new oak saplings would be planted side by side, their roots intertwining, symbolizing their enduring bond and their grandfather's sacrifice. As they stood there, the sunlight warm on their faces, the glass rings on their fingers caught the light, refracting it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. These rings, once the sinister key to a buried past, now shimmered with the promise of a future, defined not by fear, but by freedom, connection, and the fierce, unyielding power of love. The shattered mirror of their past had finally yielded to the unbroken reflection of their present, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of truth. The echoes of the flames still lingered, a faint phantom in the air, but they were no longer whispers of dread. They were whispers of a past overcome, a darkness conquered, and a future, finally, forged in the light of truth and sisterhood. They clasped hands, the cool smoothness of their matching glass rings a silent testament to their unbroken bond, their gazes fixed on the horizon, towards a future finally free from the shadows of the past, a future they would face together, sisters united by blood and the enduring strength of their shared history. A message to our audience. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through The Glass Ring. This tale, born from the depths of mystery and loss, explores the enduring power of familial bonds and the devastating impact of secrets and trauma. It highlights the profound resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity and the arduous journey towards healing and truth. The story underscores a crucial lesson, the importance of confronting difficult truths, no matter how painful, to achieve genuine understanding and forge authentic connections. It reminds us that even after years of separation and buried secrets, the ties of family can endure, offering solace and strength in the face of adversity. Ultimately, The Glass Ring is a story about the courage to remember, the transformative power of forgiveness, not for the perpetrator but for oneself, for the ability to move forward, and the enduring strength of sisterhood in the face of a shattered past. We hope you found this narrative compelling and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by liking this video, leaving a comment with your thoughts, and subscribing to our channel for more captivating stories. Your engagement helps us create more content like this. Thank you for listening.